everybody, and welcome back to Soul Studios. I am your host, Soul, and today we're talking about fanfics I wrote when I was younger and shouldn't have been writing fanfics. Instead of the Lion King one, we have a Hotel Transylvania fanfic for you today. I wrote this a long time ago. This is a huge, all of these fanfic videos, all of my videos in general should have a huge disclaimer, and that disclaimer is, one, I can't talk, and two, for fanfic videos, I was not good at this. Like, when I was younger, I was like, yes, this is peak. I am, like, an artist, and people are gonna love this, and then looking back at it as an adult, I'm very, like, this is garbage. Utter and complete garbage. So I re-recorded this audio a bunch of times. The first time I recorded it, there was some issues with the audio, like the audio itself was fine and it went fine, but we couldn't get the audio to play. I say we because I recorded it on my boyfriend's microphone. Shout out to PT. You all need to go follow his video if you like Minecraft and Epic the Musical. So, yeah. But anyway, I recorded it the first time. And looking back on it now, I don't like how it was recorded. So we're going to try and do a little bit of a different take with this. I am not going to go through it chapter by chapter like I did with the Lion King fanfic, only because if I did, we would all be sitting here bored to tears, because that's how boring and awful this fanfic was to read and to make a script about. Like, literally, it is... I can't even. So instead, I'm just going to hit highlights. If you've seen the first Hotel Transylvania, you'll know everything I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the first Hotel Transylvania, I would go watch it because it is a really cute movie. It's a lovely movie. Adam Sandler plays the lead role as Dracula, and it's got, like, Selena Gomez in it, and Andy Samberg plays Johnny, and it's a wonderful movie all around. So just go watch that. And then come back here and you can listen to me ramble about my fanfiction. So, we're just going to get into it. So, the Hotel Transylvania that I wrote when I was younger is a 3-part fanfic, just like the Lion King one. We're only talking about the first one today, because otherwise we'd be here for an hour and a half. It had 18 chapters overall, and it just followed the script of the main movie. You'd think with a script, in front of me, the story would have more structure and I would be able to do more with it because I wouldn't have to make up so much. Wrong. Apparently, when I have a script in front of me, all of my creativity runs out the window screaming. It literally jumps 3 stories and lands on its back crying for help because that's how horrible this is. The 18 chapters, like I said, covers entirety of the first movie, and it almost covers it line for line. There are only 2 chapters in here that are just original inserts, one of which is only half of an original insert. Like, the first half is an original insert, and then the second half of the chapter just plays out as the movie does. So I'm going to be hitting highlights as we go along because I don't want to go chapter for chapter. I did that with the Lion King one, and we were here for 30 minutes, and it was awful. The first chapter follows the main character. Her name is Eve. It's short for Evangeline. She hates the name Evangeline. She wants to go by Eve. That's a running thing throughout the movies, or the fanfic. We learn several things about her right off the get-go. She is half human, half vampire. We needed a Mary Sue OC in here. That's what my writing needed. She hasn't been out and about in about 100 years. Because her mother, who is a vampire, is very overprotective. Her father is dead. He was the human. There's a lot more about them. We'll get into that later. There's a whole plot thing about that, and it's weird, and we're just not going to talk about it. We learn about her abilities. She can't turn into a bat. Instead, she turns into, like, this purple mist, kind of like in the movie when you see Dracula or Mavis turn from their vampire form to their bat form. That in-between purple swirling thing, that's her ability. She can't turn into a bat, she just gets that far, and that's how she floats around. She can't walk on ceilings and stuff like regular vampires can. Her appearance is slightly altered, but for the most part, she does look very vampirish. So she goes, she's searching for the hotel. She's looking for research purposes. The first person she bumps into is Johnny. I think this is actually really cool. I like that the first person she bumps into is Johnny, because in all the Hotel Transylvania fanfics I read, that's not how it happens. Usually they just come in of their own accord, and Johnny's a separate thing. But I like that she runs into Johnny first. The only thing I hate about that is nothing's done with that. They don't have a close relationship. It's very just one note and bland. It's never expanded upon. She often thinks of him as very annoying. So that's horrible. Because I like Johnny. So as we go on, not a lot changes from the movie. So they go to the hotel, they're intercepted by Drag. Nothing about this scene changes, except the focus seems to be on Johnny, despite them both, like, Drag thinks they're both human. They are both intruding on him, even though he thinks both of them are human, the main focus is still on Johnny. It's almost like Eve is just a separate thing, and she's her own thing, and everyone tolerates her more so than they do Johnny. And it's really weird how that dynamic plays out. There's the scene where Drac takes Johnny. He's just trying to find a place to put him, and they go into the spare room. Eve is not with them when they go into the spare room, so to get in there, she turns into her mist form, slides under the door, and just reappears. Everyone acts like this is the most normal thing to, like, nobody, Johnny sees this, and it's just like, oh, whatever. And it's very odd. Very, very odd. Y'all are going to hear paper rustling around. It's because I've got my nice mic out. Not my nice mic, but my mic that attaches to my phone instead of just recording off of my phone's mic, because I wanted to see if we could have some better quality here. So I'm going through my notes if you hear paper rustling. Another thing here is that when Dracula and Eve first look at each other, there is, I guess, what I'm calling the zing flash. Which is what Johnny and Mavis get when they first look at each other. Neither realizes what this is, and this is not touched upon really for the rest of this fic. It's just briefly mentioned. But it will be expanded on later. It's just not in this fic, which I kind of like. I like that there was just a main focus on friendship and getting introduced to the hotel and the characters, but also I think that maybe it should have been a little bit more expanded on, because otherwise she's just there. And then it just goes on the script. Johnny freaks out. He learns about the monsters. They meet Mavis. Drac tries to get them to leave. This is almost word for word with the script, and this is a huge complaint I have about this fanfic in general, is that there is very little creativity here. It is almost word for word what the movie is, which means I'm basically just reading the Hotel Transylvania movie. If I wanted to do that, I would just read the Hotel Transylvania script, which is what I had to do to write this fic. It still sucks. The party planner excuse is made up. Drac is just appeasing Mavis. They go through the secret tunnels. Johnny makes that brief mention of, oh, I'm the first human here. That's really cool. And we get this brief moment in Eve's head when she's like, oh, they think I'm a full human. I don't like that. I'm half human, half vampire. This is a running thing, and it's really weird in my opinion, because why does that matter that much? She hates being thought of as a whole human. She hates being thought of as whole vampire. She is I'm half human, half vampire. And I don't know what message that was trying to send. Other than, I guess she just really likes both of her heritages. But in the way it comes off is she's just, I don't know, she's very snobby about it. And she's very snobby about it throughout the entire fan fiction. That is especially touched on in the second one where, like, Dennis is introduced. But we'll just continue on with the path we're going on. We're not here to talk about the second fanfiction today. We're here to talk about this monstrosity. So they keep going through the tunnels. They run into Frank and everyone else in the gang. There's no difference from the script here. That whole scene plays out as it goes. Johnny shows off with the guitar. Drac interrupts and is like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do all these boring things instead. And they do the boring activities. Eve does notice the growing chemistry between Johnny and Mavis, and she's very, like, supportive of that. She's very like, oh, they're really cute. They should totally get together. But that's, like, the most we get from her. We do get when Johnny interrupts enough and they're out by the pool and Drac's trying to keep order by the pool. We do get a brief moment where Eve and Mavis are left alone. There is a brief discussion here about overprotective parents, because Eve's mom is overprotective, and of course Dracula is overprotective. We see that throughout the entire movie. And Eve here tries to tell Mavis the truth, that Johnny and her are humans, that this is not what it looks like, there's a lot going on. This is a really good place to insert the difference in having the attractedness to Dracula, like Eve being attracted to Dracula, because it is briefly mentioned throughout the fic. It's, like I said, not really expanded upon, it's like a slight crush, but it is mentioned. And then her trying to relate to Mavis in almost a sisterly kind of way. And it's really weird because it comes off as you just can't make up your mind. Like, are we going to have, like, a sisterly thing between Mavis and Eve? Or are we going to have a lover's thing between Drac and Eve? Because we obviously can't have these two things at the same time, because that would be a little bit weird going forward. But it's written weird, and it could have been handled better. But also, I was like 13, 14. I didn't know what I was doing. Johnny starts the chicken fight at the pool. That whole scene plays out exactly like it does in the movie. Eve flies off. We get a brief moment of Eve brooding, being like, oh, I shouldn't be here. There's too many lies. All this stuff is going on. I should leave. He sees Mavis and Johnny having their moment on the roof. Again, thinks they're very cute. And then, of course, Johnny crashes through the roof into the sauna. And Drac leads them away to do more parting planning stuff. There is a brief moment here because Drac is shirtless, clothless. He has a towel around his waist in this scene in the movie. There is a brief moment here where Eve's like, oh my god, look at that. Look at all that. But that's about it. And then they do the pushing tables around scene. This is on script. I think what's another thing that bothers me about the entire thing being on script is that Eve doesn't really get any original lines. She's either stealing lines from Drac or she's stealing lines from Johnny. She doesn't really have her own personality because we haven't given her any. She's just stealing lines from other characters. It's worded a little different, but that's about it. And so it's hard to root for a protagonist that is not really a protagonist. She's just an inserted piece, inserted husk, if you will. Quasimodo gets a hold of Johnny. We run into Mavis, and then we have the small, like, love sidebar with Mavis. There's going to be paper rustling, I'm so sorry. Small sidebar with Mavis about the love and having a crush on Johnny and falling in love and all that. The night interrupts that they found Johnny's with Quasimodo, and then Drac and Eve quickly leave to save him. As they're on their way, there is this very, very nonchalant scene that irritates me to no end, and it's where Drac is like, you're not fully human, are you? And Eve's like, no, I'm half human, half vampire. That's it. That is how that discussion goes. This is not some big reveal. It's not some huge thing, because in this universe it would be huge. Her father was a human. Her mother was a vampire. This is unheard of in this universe that we've seen so far, but they treat it very normally. Drac is not at all, like, bothered by this. He's very, okay, I guess that's what you are, and they move on. And it irritates me, because that's not the reaction that Drac would have. He would be having an existential crisis. Everyone would be having an existential crisis, but they don't. So we get to Quasimodo's kitchen, very stick to the script. They save Johnny, they freeze Quasimodo. We move on to the scene with Dracula and all of them in Martha's painting, and we get some Eve lore, Eve and her mom lore. So it turns out Eve recognizes Martha because Martha used to be a very close friend to her mother. When Martha died, her mother blamed Dracula. She also blamed Drac because Eve's father died in that same fire. So it's very wrapped up. There's a few things that are odd about this. For one, it is mentioned briefly before that Eve's mother doesn't know that Mavis exists, like that Dracula has a daughter. I feel like if she was very close friends with Martha, then she would definitely know that Mavis exists, but who am I to say anything? And then her father's death is another thing that is not really brought up ever. It's brought up in this part of the fanfiction, but not really any other parts afterwards. And I think it's a big thing because the fact that Martha's death also occurred at the same time as Eve's father's death is significant in a way. But it's not really it's brought up one more time in this part of the fanfiction, but not really anything after that. This is not mentioned out loud, by the way. This is all in her head. She hasn't said anything to Drac. She hasn't said anything to Johnny. This is just all lore reading. Nobody else knows about this. And except for Mavis later on, I don't think anyone learns about this in the later parts of this fanfic, which is extremely odd, but whatever. So after Martha's story and all of that, they continue on. It plays out the same. And then they start getting ready for the party. The chapter here is actually an entirely original concept. Eve needs help getting ready for the party. She's not really a social person. She doesn't exactly know how she wants to style everything. She gets Mavis to help her. During one of the parts of this, we have this really weird moment where Eve takes her hair down. She's had her hair up until this point. It's a signature part of her character. And she puts her hair down, and for a moment, Mavis was like, "Whoa, you look like my mom." That's a very weird thing to have, I think. I don't like that Eve looks like Martha. That shouldn't be a thing. But I guess it is. And then they have brief discussions about how Eve's mother knew Martha and how Eve's mother hates Dracula. Eve's father died. Eve is part human, part vampire. Mavis has more of a reaction than Dracula does. She's like, isn't that impossible? Like, humans hate monsters. Like, they don't. And Eve's like, well, they just worked. Mavis has more of a reaction to this than Dracula does. I understand Mavis's reaction. She was born and she's been taught up in a world that is like, yeah, humans suck. They hate monsters. They will kill you. My big thing here is that Dracula doesn't have this same reaction when I can't. It's not. I'm glad that Mavis at least has a reaction because that's very in character. She was raised in this environment. She would have that kind of reaction. Dracula doesn't have this kind of reaction, and it irks me to no end because that's not in line with his character. Anyway, go and they do the party. There's very little deviancy from the script here. It escalates quickly to when Johnny meets Mavis and Johnny kiss, and then it's like a full script to the end of that scene. Johnny leaves, and then Eve goes back to her room. She starts undressing from the party. She initially is like, I should leave too. This lie's gone on for long enough. Then decides she's going to stay and try and fix things. She goes to find Drac. Drac is already on his way to meet her, and he's like, yeah, help me convince everybody else to help me find Johnny. And so they go to the front, and they meet with the monsters who are trying to leave from the lobby because Drac lied to them. This scene plays out exactly like it does in the movie. There is, like, the brief mention of Drac's like, he thinks Mavis and Johnny zinged, and he got in the way. There is a brief moment here when Eve is like, a zing, what's that? Is it maybe that flash they had in their eyes because she saw that? Apparently the zing flash is a visible thing in this fanfic, whereas I do not think that's how that was supposed to go. But anyway, she starts putting together things from her earlier flash with Dracula, but again, it's not really focused on. So they get the gang together, they all leave the hotel. They're driving, trying to find Johnny. Eve briefly mentions here to all the monsters that she is part human. Everyone is just like, oh, that's kind of weird. We thought you were a full vampire. You kind of look like a vampire. You have very vampire qualities. And she's like, nope, I'm part human. And they're like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're going with now. And the rest of the scene plays out very on script. They're the random things they do to try and find Johnny, and they finally get to the village. There is a brief mention here that this town is very close to Eve's mother's house. This isn't really, it's just a random fact. It's not important here. And also Eve briefly mentions when the monsters are like, what, they like us? Eve's like, oh yeah, they love you guys. There's this movie, Young Frankenstein. I love it too. It's really good. So I guess Young Frankenstein is canon in this universe. So that's neat. And then just like they convince everybody to help them get Drac to the airport because he can't be out in the sun. And then Drac leaves. Eve does not go with him. She stays with the rest of the gang. They head back to the hotel. So that just plays out exactly like it does in the script. When Eve does get back to the hotel, she visits Mavis, who was, of course, understandably upset. But this first bit of the scene is originally written, and it plays out as Eve just sucks at comforting people. She's very bad at it. She basically tells Mavis, bro, you gotta get over it. You gotta be up. You gotta be happy. Don't let this get you down. And it's very insensitive overall. Drac quickly arrives with Johnny, thank God, because heaven knows what Eve would have done to Mavis's mental state. And that scene plays out, Mavis and Johnny reunite, and it's very cute. There's a brief moment here where Drac and Eve have some small talk that I think is supposed to be flirtatious banter, but it's weird, because, like, throughout the fic, they haven't really had that much interaction that isn't just Eve, I don't know anyone's names, Eve stealing Johnny's lines that are said to Drac. It's weird. Anyway, Eve starts getting ready for the redo party. It goes and gets Johnny. There is a very brief meta joke here about how they all wear the same outfits all the time, and I actually think it's really funny. I think this is probably the funniest joke in the entire fanfic, because it's very like, Eve opens the door, and there's Johnny, and he's wearing what he usually does, and Eve, in her head, is briefly like, actually, he seems to be wearing that all the time. In fact, everyone seems to be wearing the same thing all the time. Weird. And that's how it plays out. And I actually thought it was really funny when I was reading back through this, because I was like, see, I know this humor isn't really that funny, but compared to everything else in this fanfic, that's the funniest thing I've seen so far, which should tell you a lot. So they go, she gets Johnny, she gets Drac, because they're trying to put together last minute things for the party. There is another brief mention here of she looks like Martha because she has her hair down again, but to Drac, because he freezes up, he's like, whoa, you look like my dead wife. And it's weird, and I'm never going to say it's not weird, because it is. And then the party plays out the same as the script, including the rap and song that Johnny, Mavis, and Dracula do. It's not, like, word for word in this fanfic, but it is mentioned that they do that. The party ends. There's some brief discussions between everyone. There's, like, a quick thing between Mavis, Drac, and Eve, where Mavis is kind of looking at them because they're around each other a little bit more now. Mavis is kind of looking at them like, there might be something happening here. I'm not sure, but that's about it. And everyone parts ways, and then Eve receives a letter from her mom, and it's basically like, you're at this hotel, you're with this guy I hate. Maybe come home, 'cause I hate this. And Eve is like, well, I'm not coming home. I like it here. And she stays at the hotel. And that's the end. That is everything. My overall thoughts on this is that I shouldn't have been writing anything ever. I should have given up my writing career the moment I started writing this. I didn't, thank God, because now we have content, but, yeah, I should have. I make it sound more exciting than it is, which is my job. This is the job of a content creator, is to make things that could be boring sound a lot more exciting than they are. If you go and read this, it's maybe a 30-minute read. It's probably one of the most boring things you will ever read in your life. I was getting physically angry while making notes for this and reading it, because it was just like, this is awful. When I said it sticks to the script, I mean it. It sticks to the script. There was very little inner dialogue from Eve. There was very little original content in here. It's all just, this is Hotel Transylvania, but I inserted the character here. She's not really that important, and that's about it. It does get a little bit better on the second fic, if I remember right, and the third one is actually my favorite, because there's a lot of changes that were made there, and I was able to do a lot more with originality there. But for this first one, for this setup, terrible. Why anyone would read the rest of the parts of this fanfic from this is makes me question people's sanity, honestly. But yeah, Do I think that I'm being a bit harsh because I was a very new writer? Yeah, I guess. But also, I feel like even a 3-year-old would be able to take an original character, insert them in this fanfic, and be like, well, they're gonna do this, and it's gonna make this a little bit different, and they're gonna do this, and it's gonna make this scene a little bit different. Like, there are so many things in my head. It's like, I could have done so much with this character and had some different outcomes, done some different scenes, done something with her character that wasn't just a duplicate of Johnny. It's kind of sad, honestly, and I'm very disappointed in myself as a writer because I could have done this so much better. I have attempted to rewrite this a couple times. I have it in drafts somewhere where I've attempted to flesh this out a bit more and give Eve more character and just overall make it a more enjoyable fanfic, but I'm not sure I can at this point. After reading all of that, I want to give up on it entirely. So yeah, this is me telling you to go back and read fanfictions you wrote when you were a young teen, because it's hysterical. If you were a bad writer like I was. If you weren't, good for you. Put some fanfictions that I should read down in the comments. Maybe one day we'll start a video series where I just overanalyze your fanfics. Warning, I won't be as harsh as I am to mine because I'm nice. But to myself, I'm going to beat the ever-living life out of all of this. But if you guys were to send me fanfics to read, I would be like, oh, this is amazing. This is a piece of art. Because I can't be mean to people. So that's about it for this video. I am sorry if it feels like a downer. I really did try to make it more comedic because the first initial draft of this script and this video was very, very angry. I was very angry at myself and the writing, but I've tried to find comedy and humor in it because in the end, it's just a fanfic I wrote when I was younger, and so of course it's gonna be bad. I'm not a professional writer. Why would it be this grand masterpiece? But anyway, that is all I have for now. Yeah. So I have no idea when the next video is gonna come out because I've thrown my upload schedule out the window. So y'all just gotta look forward to the day that I mysteriously drop a video. So that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Y'all stay safe, drink some water, remember to breathe, and I will see you in the next video.